The Iliad by Homer, Book 17. You're listening to Classics Made Clear, classic texts translated with accuracy and accessibility for today's listener. Please like, subscribe, leave a comment, and share these videos with your friends. As Patroclus was brought down by the Trojans in the thick of battle, he did not go unnoticed by Menelaus, son of Atreus, a man who loved war. Menelaus moved forward through the front fighters, shining in bright bronze armor. He stood over the body like a mother cow, standing over her first calf, lowing in grief, not knowing this pain before. He held his spear out in front of him and his well-rounded shield, ready to kill any man who came against him. But the fall of noble Patroclus did not escape the notice of Panthous' son, Euphorbos, strong with the ash spear. He came and stood close and spoke to Menelaus. "Son of Atreus, Menelaus, favored by Zeus, leader of armies, step back, leave the body, and let the bloody armor lie. No Trojan before me, nor any of our famous allies, struck Patroclus first in the strong clash of battle. So let me win this great glory among the Trojans. Go before I strike you and take the sweetness of your life away." Menelaus, deeply angered, answered him, "Father Zeus, it is not right for a man to boast so proudly. Not even a leopard, or a lion, or a wild boar with a raging heart, whose spirit swells the most in its chest, has such fury as the sons of Panthous with their spears. Yet even Hyperenor, breaker of horses, did not enjoy his youth for long. He once stood against me and mocked me, saying I was the weakest fighter among the Danaans. But I say his feet will never carry him home again, to bring joy to his dear wife and his honored parents. So I think I can break your strength as well, if you stand against me. But I tell you, step back and get away. Go back into the crowd and do not stand against me, before you suffer harm. A fool only understands after the damage is done." He spoke this way, but he did not persuade Euphorbos. Answering him, Euphorbos said, "Now, Menelaus, favored by Zeus, you will pay the price for my brother, whom you killed. And you boast about it. You made his wife a widow in the inner room of her new marriage, and you brought unspeakable grief and sorrow to his parents. I could put an end to the mourning of those miserable people if I carry back your head and your armor and place them in the hands of Panthous and the beautiful Phrontis. But this fight between us will not go on much longer without being tested, nor will it be left undecided, whether it ends in strength or in fear." So he spoke, and struck Menelaus's shield in its full circle. But the bronze did not break through. The spear point bent back against the strong shield. Then Menelaus, son of Atreus, prayed to Father Zeus and rushed forward with his bronze spear. As Euphorbos was drawing back, Menelaus struck him in the throat, and pressing in with his heavy hand, drove the spear straight through the soft part of his neck. He fell with a crash, and his armor rang out over him. His hair, beautiful like the Graces, was soaked with blood, his braided locks bound with gold and silver. Like a young olive tree that a man raises in a lonely place, well-watered, growing strong and beautiful, and stirred by the winds from every direction so that it blooms with white flowers. Then suddenly a storm wind comes upon it with great force, tears it out of the ground, and stretches it flat on the earth. So was Euphorbos, son of Panthous with the strong ash spear, when Menelaus, son of Atreus, killed him and stripped his armor. Like a lion raised in the hills, trusting in its strength, that seizes the finest cow from a grazing herd. First it breaks her neck with its strong teeth, then tears into the blood and all the insides. Around it, the dogs and the herdsmen cry out loudly from a distance, but they are not willing to come close and face it, because a pale fear grips them. In the same way, no Trojan had the courage in his chest to come forward and face glorious Menelaus. Then Menelaus, son of Atreus, might easily have carried off the shining armor of Panthus' son, if Phoebus Apollo had not grown angry. He stirred up Hector against him, equal to swift Ares, taking the form of a man, the leader of the Cicones, Mentes, and standing near him, spoke winged words. "Hector, now you are chasing something that cannot be caught, the horses of swift Achilles. They are hard for mortal men to control or ride, for anyone except Achilles, whose mother is immortal. Meanwhile, Menelaus, the warlike son of Atreus, stands over Patroclus and has killed the best of the Trojans, Euphorbos, son of Panthous, and has put an end to his fierce strength." So he spoke, and the god went back again into the struggle of men. But terrible grief filled Hector's dark heart. He looked across the ranks, and at once he saw what was happening. One man stripping the shining armor, the other lying on the ground, with blood pouring from his wound. Then he moved forward through the front fighters, blazing in bright bronze armor. I am not one who trembles at battle or the crash of horses, but the will of Zeus is always stronger than any man's. He can frighten even a brave warrior and take victory away from him. He takes away victory easily or drives a man on to fight himself. But come now, my friend, stand beside me and watch what I do. See whether I will be a coward all day, as you say, or whether I will stop some Danaan, no matter how eager he is, from fighting over fallen Patroclus." So he spoke and shouted loudly to the Trojans, "Trojans, Lycians, and Dardanians who fight at close range, be men, my friends, and remember your fierce strength while I put on the fine armor of blameless Achilles, which I stripped from strong Patroclus when I killed him." After speaking, Hector of the shining helm left the harsh battle and ran quickly after his companions, who were carrying the shining armor of Achilles toward the city. He caught up with them before they had gone far. Standing apart from the battle, he took off his own armor and gave it to the Trojans to carry back to sacred Ilion. Then he put on the immortal armor of Achilles, son of Peleus, the armor the gods of heaven had given to his father, and the father had passed down to his son. But that son did not grow old in his father's armor. When Zeus, who gathers the clouds, saw him from afar putting on the armor of godlike Achilles, he shook his head and spoke to his own heart. "Poor man, you do not even think of death, though it stands very near you. And now you put on the immortal armor of a man far greater than you, a man whom even others fear. You have killed his dear companion, a strong and noble man, and taken his armor from his head and shoulders in a way you should not have done. But for now, I will give you great strength. Still, you will not come back from the battle. So Andromache will not receive from your hands the shining armor of Achilles." He spoke, the son of Cronos, and nodded his dark brows. The armor fitted itself onto Hector's body, and Ares, the terrible god of war, entered into him, filling him inside with strength and power. Then Hector went forward, shouting loudly among his famous allies, blazing in the armor of great-hearted Achilles. He moved through their ranks, speaking to each leader to stir them on: Mesthles, Glaukos, Medon, Thessalokos, Asteropios, Disenor, Hippothoos, Phorkys, Chromios, and Enomos the seer. Encouraging them, he spoke winged words. "Listen to me, countless allies who live around us. I did not gather you here from your cities because I lacked numbers or needed more men. I brought you here so that you would willingly defend the wives of the Trojans and their little children from the war-loving Achaeans. With this purpose, I wear down my own people, giving gifts and food to strengthen the spirit in each one of you. So now, let each man go straight forward, either die or live. That is the call of battle. And the man who drags Patroclus, even though he is dead, back into the Trojan ranks, and Ajax gives way before him, I will give him half the spoils, and I will keep half for myself, and his glory will be equal to mine. So he spoke, and they lifted their spears and moved straight against the Danans. Their hearts were full of hope that they would pull the body away from Ajax, son of Telamon. But they were fools, for over that body Ajax would take the lives of many. Then Ajax spoke to Menelaus, strong in the battle cry. Hector came on with a sharp cry, like the unquenchable fire of Hephaestus. Menelaus, son of Atreus, heard the piercing shout. Deeply troubled, he spoke to his own proud heart. Ah me! If I leave behind this fine armor and Patroclus, who lies here for my honor, will not some Danaan blame me when he sees it? But if I stay and fight Hector and the Trojans alone, out of shame, will they not surround me many against one? Hector of the shining helm is leading all the Trojans here. Why does my heart argue with me like this? When a man fights against another, whom a god supports, great disaster quickly rolls down on him. So no Danaan will blame me if I give way before Hector, since he fights with a god behind him. But if only I could hear the voice of Ajax, strong in the war cry, then the two of us might go back and remember our courage, even against a god, and try to drag the body back for Achilles, son of Peleus. That would be the best we could hope for in such trouble. While he was turning these thoughts over in his mind, the Trojan ranks came forward, and Hector led them. Menelaus stepped back and left the body, turning again and again like a great bearded lion that dogs and men drive away from a farm with spears and shouting. The lion's brave heart grows cold, and he goes unwillingly away from the yard. So fair-haired Menelaus moved away from Patroclus, but after he reached the group of his companions, he turned and stood still, looking all around for Ajax, the great son of Telamon. He quickly saw him on the left side of the battle, encouraging his men and urging them to fight. Since Phoebus Apollo had filled them with a strange and terrible fear, Menelaus ran and quickly came up beside Ajax and spoke to him. "Come this way, Ajax, my friend. We must hurry to Patroclus, who has fallen, and see if we can carry his body back to Achilles. It is stripped bare. Hector of the shining helm has taken his armor." So he spoke and stirred the fighting spirit in Ajax. Ajax pushed forward through the front fighters, and fair-haired Menelaus went with him. But Hector, after he had stripped the shining armor from Patroclus, was dragging the body, meaning to cut the head from the shoulders with sharp bronze and haul the corpse away to give to the dogs of Troy. Then Ajax came close, holding his shield like a wall. Hector backed away into the crowd of his companions and climbed onto his chariot. He handed the fine armor to the Trojans to carry back to the city, so it would be great glory for him. Ajax stood over the son of Menoetius, covering him with his wide shield, like a lion over its young. When hunters meet it in the forest, as it leads its little ones, the lion stands strong in its power, lowering its brows to cover its eyes. So Ajax stood over the hero Patroclus. On the other side stood Menelaus, son of Atreus, a man who loves war, holding his ground, while great sorrow grew in his chest. Then Glaucus, son of Hippolochus, leader of the Lycians, looked hard at Hector and spoke sharply. "Hector, you look great, but you fall far short in battle. That famous name of yours, it belongs to a runner. Think now how you will save your city and your people, you alone with those born in Ilion. None of the Lycians will fight the Danaans any more for your city, since there has been no thanks at all. For our struggle against your enemies has been long and without rest. How will you save some weaker man in your ranks, hard-hearted as you are, when you left Sarpedon, your guest friend and companion, to become spoil and prey for the Argives? He was of great help to you and your city while he lived, and now you did not have the courage to keep the dogs away from him. So now, if any of the Lycians will listen to me, we will go home, and steep destruction will fall upon Troy. For if the Trojans had any bold and fearless strength, the kind that comes to men who fight for their homeland against their enemies, we would quickly drag Patroclus back into Ilion. And if this man, though dead, were brought into the great city of Priam, if we pulled him out of the battle, then the Argives would at once give back the fine armor of Sarpedon, and we could carry his body into Ilion. For this dead man served the greatest of the Argives by the ships, and his companions are fierce fighters at close range. But you could not bring yourself to stand against Ajax, that great-hearted man, nor even look him in the eye in the noise of battle, nor fight him face to face, since he is stronger than you." Hector of the shining helm looked at him darkly and answered, "Glaucus, why have you spoken such a proud and cutting word? I thought you were wiser than all the others who live in rich Lycia. But now I despise your thinking for what you have said, that I cannot stand against mighty Ajax. Dear friend, Menelaus, favored by Zeus, I no longer have hope that even you and I will make it safely out of this battle. I am not so afraid for the body of Patroclus. He will soon fill the dogs and birds of Troy. But I fear for my own head, and for yours as well. The cloud of war covers everything, and Hector is pressing in on us. For us, steep destruction is near. But come, call out to the best of the Danaans, if any of them can hear you." So he spoke, and Menelaus, strong in the war cry, obeyed him. He lifted his voice and shouted loudly to the Danaans, "My friends, leaders and rulers of the Argives, you who drink the common wine beside Agamemnon and Menelaus, the sons of Atreus, and each of you gives commands to the people, with honor and glory coming to you from Zeus. It is hard for me to pick out each one of you, since the battle burns so fiercely. But let each man come forward on his own, and feel shame in his heart, if Patroclus is given to the dogs of Troy." So he spoke, and swift Ajax, son of Oileus, heard him first, and came running through the battle to stand beside him. After him came Idomeneus, and with him his companion Meriones, equal to the war god in killing men, and who could name all the others who came after them, stirring up the fighting strength of the Achaeans. The Trojans rushed forward together in a mass, and Hector led them, like the roaring surf of a swollen river crashing against its current, while the outer shores thunder with the backwash of the sea. So loudly the Trojans came on with their battle cry. But the Achaeans stood firm around the son of Menoetius, holding one spirit among them. They stood close together, shielded by their bronze armor, and around them the son of Cronos poured a deep mist over the shining of their helmets. For before this he had not hated the son of Menoetius while he was alive as the companion of Achilles. But now he could not bear for him to become prey for the dogs of the Trojans, and so he stirred his companions to defend him. At first the Trojans pushed back the bright-eyed Achaeans. The Achaeans left the body and ran, but the proud Trojans did not strike any of them with their spears, though they tried. Instead, they dragged at the corpse. But the Achaeans were not going to give way for long, because Ajax quickly turned them back. Ajax, who in size and in action was the greatest of all the Danaans after Achilles. He charged straight through the front fighters like a strong wild boar that easily scatters dogs and young men in the mountains when it turns to face them in a valley. So the son of Telamon, glorious Ajax, turned and broke apart the Trojan lines, who had been standing over Patroclus, hoping to drag him to their city and win glory. Then Hippothous, the strong son of Pelasgian Lethos, was dragging the body by the foot through the thick of the fight. He had tied the strap of his shield around the ankle tendons, trying to win favor with Hector and the Trojans. But suddenly disaster came upon him, and no one could save him, though they wanted to. The son of Telamon rushed through the crowd and struck him at close range, driving his spear through the bronze cheek pieces of his helmet. The horsehair-crested helmet shattered around the spear's point from the force of the blow and the strength of his hand. His brain burst out from the wound along the shaft of the spear. Blood streamed out, and his strength gave way there. From his hands he let go the foot of great-hearted Patroclus, and it fell to the ground. He himself collapsed face down over the body, far from rich Larissa. He could not repay his dear parents for raising him, for his life was cut short, brought down by the spear of great-hearted Ajax. Then Hector hurled his shining spear at Ajax, but Ajax saw it coming and barely avoided the bronze weapon. Instead, it struck Schedios, the son of high-hearted Iphitos, the best of the Phocians, who lived in his house in famous Panopeus and ruled over many men. Hector hit him beneath the collarbone, and the bronze point drove straight through and came out by the lower shoulder. He fell with a crash, and his armor clattered over him. Ajax in turn struck Phorcys, the son of Phaenops, as he stood over Hippothous, hitting him in the belly. He shattered the breastplate, and the bronze tore through his insides. Phorcys fell into the dust, clutching at the earth with his hands. Then the Trojan front fighters, along with glorious Hector, gave ground. The Argives shouted loudly and dragged back the bodies of Phorcys and Hippothous, stripping the armor from their shoulders. At that moment, the Trojans might have been driven back into Ilion itself, beaten down by the war-loving Achaeans, and the Argives might have won glory beyond what Zeus had planned, by their own strength and power, if Apollo himself had not stirred up Aeneas. Taking the form of Periphas, the herald, son of Epaetos, who had grown old serving Aeneas's father and was a man wise in loyal thoughts, Apollo spoke to him in that form. "Aeneas, how could you ever defend steep Ilion, even against a god's will, as I have seen other men do, trusting in their own strength and courage, in their numbers and bold hearts? But now Zeus wishes victory, far more for us than for the Danaans, yet you shrink back in fear and will not fight." So he spoke, and Aeneas recognized far-shooting Apollo as he looked straight at him. Then he shouted loudly to Hector, "Hector, and you other leaders of the Trojans and their allies, this is a shame to be driven back into Ilion by the war-loving Achaeans, beaten by fear. But now a god stands near me, and tells me that Zeus, the highest counselor, is helping us in this battle. So let us go straight at the Danaans, and not let them carry Patroclus back to their ships, even though he is dead." So he spoke, and leaping far ahead of the front lines, he stood firm. The Trojans rallied and turned to face the Achaeans. Then Aeneas struck down Leocritus, son of Arisbas, and a strong companion of Lycomedes. As he fell, warlike Lycomedes pitied him. He stepped forward close and threw his shining spear, striking Apisaon, son of Hippasos, a leader of men, in the liver beneath the ribs. His knees gave way at once, and he fell. He had come from rich Paeonia, and was second only to Asteropaios in battle. When Asteropaios saw him fall, he too was stirred with pity and rushed forward to fight the Danaans. But he could not break through, for they stood around Patroclus, shielded on all sides and holding their spears out in front. Ajax moved among them, giving orders everywhere. He would not allow any man to fall back from the body, nor let anyone. He would not let any man fall back from the body, nor allow anyone to go out ahead and fight apart from the others. Instead, he ordered them to stand tightly around it and fight at close range. Such were the commands of mighty Ajax. The ground ran red with blood, and men fell one after another. Trojans and their strong allies, and Danaans as well. For they too did not fight without bloodshed, though far fewer of them died, since they always remembered to stand close together and protect one another from sudden death. So they fought like fire, and you would not have thought the sun or the moon still stood in the sky. A thick mist covered that part of the battle where the best men stood around the fallen son of Menoetios. But elsewhere, the other Trojans and the well-armored Achaeans fought in clear air, under the bright light of the sun, with no cloud anywhere over the land or mountains. They fought in bursts, keeping distance from one another and avoiding the painful missiles. But those in the middle suffered greatly, in the mist and the fighting, worn down by the cruel bronze, those who were the best among them. Yet two men, Thrasymedes and Antilochos, had not yet heard that noble Patroclus had been killed. They still believed he was alive, fighting in the front lines against the Trojans. So they stayed apart from the others, guarding against death and retreat among their own men, since this is what Nestor had ordered them to do when he sent them out from the black ships into battle. For the rest, all day long the bitter struggle of war raged. Constant sweat and exhaustion soaked them, their knees, legs and feet beneath them, and their hands and eyes as they fought over the brave companion of swift-footed Achilles. Like when a man gives the hide of a great ox, soaked in fat, to his people to stretch, men stand in a circle and pull it tight. The moisture drains out, the fat soaks in, and with many pulling, the hide is stretched out evenly. In the same way, both sides in a tight space pulled at the body, dragging it back and forth. The Trojans hoped to drag him to Ilion, while the Achaeans hoped to bring him back to the hollow ships. Around him a savage struggle rose, so fierce that not even Ares, who delights in battle, nor Athena would have looked on it with scorn, not even in anger. Such was the terrible work Zeus stretched out over Patroclus that day, for both men and horses. Yet Achilles, godlike though he was, did not yet know that Patroclus had died. The fighting was far from the swift ships, beneath the walls of Troy, and Achilles never thought Patroclus was dead. He believed he was still alive, pressed back near the gates, and would return again. For he never expected him to take the city without him, nor even with him. Often his mother had told him, apart from others, the plans of great Zeus, but this time she had not told him the terrible thing that had happened, that his dearest companion had been killed. Meanwhile, they kept pressing in around the body, holding their spears, never stopping, killing one another on both sides, and one of the bronze-armored Achaeans would say, "My friends, there is no honor for us if we go back again to the hollow ships. Let the black earth open here and swallow us all. That would be far better for us. If we give this man over to the Trojans, breakers of horses, to drag back to their own city, and win glory from him. And in turn, some strong-hearted Trojan would say, "My friends, even if it is our fate that we all be killed here over this man, still let none of us shrink back from the fighting." So a man would speak and stir the spirit in each one. And so they fought on. The iron clash of battle rose up into the bronze sky through the clear air. But the horses of Achilles stood apart from the fighting and wept, ever since they first learned that their driver had fallen in the dust under the hands of man-killing Hector. Automedon, the strong son of Diores, struck them again and again with the swift whip, and spoke to them in many ways, begging them, then threatening them. But they would not go back to the ships by the wide Hellespont, nor would they go forward into the battle with the Achaeans. They stood still, like a gravestone that stands firm over the tomb of a dead man or woman. So they stood there, holding the beautiful chariot in place, their heads bowed down to the ground. Hot tears fell from their eyes to the earth as they mourned their driver. Their long manes were stained and fell on both sides of the yoke. When Zeus, son of Cronos, saw them grieving, he pitied them. He shook his head and spoke to his own heart. "Poor creatures, why did we give you to King Peleus, a mortal man, when you yourselves are deathless and ageless? Was it only so that you might share in the sorrow of miserable humans? For there is nothing more miserable than man among all the creatures that breathe and move upon the earth. But truly Hector, son of Priam, will not ride in your finely made chariot. I will not allow it. Is it not enough that he has taken the armor and boasts over it? But now I will put strength into your knees and into your hearts, so that you may carry Automedon safely out of the battle to the hollow ships. For I will still grant the Trojans the glory of killing, until they reach the well-benched ships, until the sun sets and sacred darkness comes." So he spoke, and breathed great strength into the horses. They shook the dust from their manes down to the ground, and quickly carried the swift chariot among Trojans and Achaeans alike. From the chariot, Automedon fought on, grieving for his companion. He drove his horses forward like a vulture among geese, easily escaping the Trojan roar, and then just as easily charging back again into the thick of them. But he could not strike down any man when he rushed in pursuit. For there was no way, being alone in the chariot, to thrust with the spear and at the same time control the fast-running horses. At last one of his companions saw him, Alcimedon, son of Laerces, descendant of Haemon. He came up behind the chariot and spoke to Automedon. "Automedon, what god has put this foolish plan in your mind and taken away your good sense? Why are you fighting the Trojans alone in the front of battle? Your companion has been killed, and Hector himself is wearing and boasting in the armor of Achilles." Then Automedon, son of Diores, answered him, "Alcimedon, what other Achaean is equal to you in handling and controlling these immortal horses, except Patroclus, who was like the gods in wisdom? While he lived? Now death and fate have taken him. So you take the whip and the shining reins, and I will step down from the chariot, so I can fight." He spoke, and Alcimedon quickly leapt onto the chariot and took the reins and the whip in his hands, while Automedon jumped down. But glorious Hector saw them at once and called out to Aeneas, who stood near him, "Aeneas, wise leader of the bronze-armored Trojans, I see the horses of swift Achilles here in the battle, with weak drivers. I would hope we could take them, if you are willing in your heart. If the two of us charge them together, they would not dare to stand against us and fight." He spoke, and the strong son of Anchises did not refuse. The two of them went straight forward, covering their shoulders with strong, thick ox-hide shields, layered with bronze. With them came Chromios and godlike Aratos, both eager, their hearts full of hope that they would kill the men and drive off the strong-necked horses. But they were fools. They would not return from Automedon without bloodshed. Automedon prayed to Father Zeus, and his dark heart was filled with strength and courage. Then he spoke at once to Alcimedon, his faithful companion. "Alcimedon, do not hold the horses back from me, but keep them close behind me. I do not think I can stand against the strength of Hector, son of Priam. He will kill us and climb onto Achilles' beautiful maned horses and scatter the ranks of the Argives, or else he himself will fall in the front lines." So he spoke, and called out to the two Ajaxes and to Menelaos, "Ajax, leaders of the Argives, and you, Menelaos, leave the dead man in the care of those who are best able to stand over him and hold back the lines of men. But come help us who are still alive, and drive away this pitiless day. For Hector and Aeneas, who are the best of the Trojans, are pressing the battle hard in this direction. Still, these things lie in the hands of the gods. I will cast my spear, and Zeus will take care of the rest." He spoke, and balanced his long-shadowed spear, and threw it. It struck Aratos's shield full on, but the shield did not stop it. The bronze drove straight through and pierced deep into his belly beneath the belt. Like when a strong man with a sharp axe strikes a field ox behind the horns and cuts through the sinew, and the ox leaps forward and then collapses, so Aratos leapt forward and fell on his back. The spear quivered deep in his belly and loosened his limbs. Then Hector hurled his shining spear at Automedon, but Automedon saw it coming and dodged the bronze weapon. He bent forward, and the long spear stuck into the ground behind him, the butt end shaking as it struck. There the strength of Ares left it. Then the two would have rushed at each other with swords at close range, but the two Ajaxes came between them, answering their companion's call. Seeing them, Hector, Aeneas, and godlike Chromios fell back again in fear, leaving Aratos lying there, wounded in his belly. Then Automedon, equal to the war god in battle, stripped the armor from him and spoke in triumph. "Now at last I have eased a little of the grief in my heart for the death of Patroclus, though the man I killed was far lesser than he." So he spoke, and lifting the blood-wet spoils he laid them in the chariot, then climbed up himself, his hands and feet still streaked with blood, like a lion that has fed on a bull. But again around Patroclus the battle surged, harsh, exhausting, full of tears, and Athena came down from the sky to stir the fighting once more. For Zeus had sent her. His orders will now turned toward helping the Danaans. Like when Zeus stretches a crimson rainbow across the sky as a sign to mortal men, either of war or of storm that halts their labor and brings hardship on their flocks. So Athena, wrapped in a shining cloud, passed into the ranks of the Achaeans and roused each man to fight. First she came to the son of Atreus, strong Menelaos, standing nearby, taking the shape and tireless voice of Phoenix. "Menelaos," she said, "this will be shame and disgrace for you if the swift dogs of Troy tear apart the loyal companion of noble Achilles beneath their wall. Stand firm and rouse all your people." Then Menelaos, loud in the war cry, answered, "Phoenix, my father, honored and old, if only Athena would grant me strength and turn aside the rain of missiles, then I would gladly stand beside Patroclus and defend him, for his death has struck deep into my heart. But Hector burns like a raging fire, never ceasing in his slaughter with the bronze, for Zeus himself grants him glory." So he spoke, and bright-eyed Athena rejoiced that he called upon her first among the gods. And sent, the poet says, she rejoiced, because he had called on her first among all the gods. And Athena set strength into his shoulders and knees, and breathed into his chest a strange, relentless courage, like a stinging fly that, though driven away again and again from a man's skin, keeps coming back to bite, hungry for blood. So she filled his dark heart with that same stubborn daring. Then Menelaus stepped forward over Patroclus and hurled his bright spear. Among the Trojans stood Pode, son of Aetion, rich and a good man, and dearest to Hector of all his companions, a friend who sat at his table and shared his feasts. Him Menelaus struck as he turned to flee. The spear drove clean through the belt, and he crashed down with a thunder. Then Menelaus dragged the body away from the Trojans, back toward his own companions. But now Apollo came and stood beside Hector, taking the shape of Phinops, the dearest of Hector's guest friends, who lived far away in Abydos. In that likeness, Apollo spoke. Hector, who now among the Achaeans would fear you. See how you shrank back from Menelaus, who once was a weak spearman, and now he goes alone, carrying off a corpse from the Trojans, and has killed your loyal companion, brave among the front fighters, Podes, son of Aetion. So he spoke, and a dark cloud of grief covered Hector. At once he surged forward through the front ranks, his helmet blazing in bronze. Then Zeus took up his tasseled aegis, shining and terrible, and wrapped Mount Ida in cloud. He flashed lightning and thundered mightily and shook the earth beneath, granting victory to the Trojans and driving fear into the Achaeans. And first to break and run was Peneleos the Boeotian. For Peneleos, always turning to face the fight, was struck in the shoulder. A glancing blow, yet the spear of Polydamas, cast from close range, grazed the bone itself. Then Hector struck down Leitos, wounding his hand at the wrist, and his fighting was ended. He shrank back, staring in fear, no longer trusting he could hold a spear against the Trojans. But as Hector pressed forward, Idomeneus struck him, a hit to the chest upon the corselet, yet the long spear shattered, and the Trojans cried out. Hector answered with a cast, aimed at Idomeneus, but missed him narrowly, and struck instead Koironos, driver of Meriones. Koironos had come from Lyctos, swift to bring the chariot, a saving light to Idomeneus in the fight. But now Hector struck him beneath the jaw, by the ear. The spear drove through, shattering teeth at the roots and splitting the tongue in two. He fell from the chariot, the reins spilling to the ground. Meriones leapt down, snatched them up in his hands and cried out, "Drive on! Lash the horses until you reach the ships! You can see it yourself, the strength of the Achaeans is failing." So he spoke, and Idomeneus whipped the bright-maned horses back toward the hollow ships, fear settling deep in his heart. But this did not escape Ajax the Great, nor Menelaus. They saw clearly now that Zeus was turning the tide, giving the Trojans the stronger hand in battle. Then towering Ajax the Great spoke first among them. Shame, by now even a child could see it, that Zeus himself is helping the Trojans. Every spear they throw strikes true, whether cast by a weak man or a strong. Zeus guides them all alike, but ours fall useless to the ground. Come, let us think on the best plan, how we might save the body and also win our own return, to bring joy to our companions who look on from afar in grief and no longer believe we can hold back Hector's fury, but think he will drive us all the way to the black ships, and someone must go quickly to tell Achilles, for I do not think he yet knows the bitter news that his dearest companion is dead. But I cannot see such a man, for mist covers everything, men and horses alike. Father Zeus, lift this mist from the sons of the Achaeans, make the sky clear, give us sight, and then, in the light, destroy us, if that is your will." He spoke, and as he wept, Zeus pitied him. At once the mist was scattered, the darkness driven away, and the sun broke through, and all the battle stood revealed. Then Ajax said again to Menelaus, "Look now, Menelaus, see if you can find Antilochus still alive, and send him quickly to Achilles to tell him that the man he loved most is dead." So he spoke, and Menelaus obeyed. He set out at once, like a lion leaving the cattle yard, like a lion that has harried dogs and men, but now is worn out. They will not let him tear the fat from the cattle, keeping watch all night against him. He lunges in, hungry for meat, but gains nothing, for the spears come thick against him from bold hands, and burning torches too, which even in his fury he fears. So at daybreak he goes away, his heart disappointed. So Menelaus went from Patroclus, very unwilling, for he feared that the Achaeans, under the pressure of battle, might leave the body there as spoil for the enemy. And as he went, he called out many times to Meriones and to the two Ajax the Great, "Iantes, leaders of the Argives, and you, Meriones, now let each of you remember poor Patroclus, for he knew how to be gentle to all men while he lived. But now death and fate have overtaken him." So spoke fair-haired Menelaus, and went on, glancing everywhere, like an eagle, which men say sees most sharply of all the birds beneath the sky. Even from high in the air it does not miss the swift-footed hare crouching in the thick brush, but dives upon it, and quickly takes its life. So now, Menelaus, your bright eyes swept everywhere over the mass of your companions, searching to see if he might find the son of Nestor still alive. And quickly he saw him, on the left side of the whole battle, encouraging his comrades and urging them to fight. Coming near, he stood beside him and spoke. "Antilochus, come here, illustrious one, so that you may hear from me a bitter message, one that should never have been. You can see it yourself," he said, "how the god is rolling disaster against the Danaans, and how victory is going to the Trojans. The best of the Achaeans has fallen, Patroclus, and a great longing has come upon the Danaans. But you run quickly to Achilles by the ships of the Achaeans, and tell him, perhaps he may come swiftly and save the body to the ships, though stripped bare, for Hector of the shining helm has taken his armor." So he spoke, and Antilochus shuddered at the word when he heard it. For a long time speechlessness took hold of him. His eyes filled with tears, and his strong voice was choked. Yet even so, he did not neglect the command of Menelaus. He ran at once, giving his armor to his blameless companion, Laodocus, who stood nearby holding the solid-hoofed horses. So his feet carried him out of the battle, weeping to bring the evil message to Achilles, son of Peleus. But you, Menelaus, your spirit would not allow you to abandon your struggling companions after Antilochus had gone, though his absence was a great loss to the Pylians. Instead, he sent Thrasymedes, the brilliant, to help them, and himself went back again to the hero Patroclus. He ran, and took his place beside the two Ajax the Great, and spoke. "I have sent the man you named to the fast ships, to go to Achilles, swift of foot. But I do not think he will come now, for all his anger against brilliant Hector. for he cannot fight the Trojans while he is unarmed. So we ourselves must consider the best plan, how we may rescue the body, and how we may also escape death and doom from the shouting Trojans." Then huge Telamonian Ajax answered him, "All that you have said, noble Menelaus, is right. But come, you and Meriones, bend down quickly and lift the body." "Lift the body," he said, "and carry it out of the struggle. Behind you, we too will fight off the Trojans and glorious Hector, we who share one name and one spirit, and who have long stood side by side against furious Ares." So he spoke, and they took the body up from the ground in their arms, lifting it high with great effort. Behind them the Trojan host cried out when they saw the Achaeans raising the corpse, and they rushed forward like dogs upon a wounded boar before the hunters. For a time they ran in, eager to tear him apart. But when the boar turns at bay, trusting in his strength, they scatter and fall back in fear. So too, the Trojans pressed close together, stabbing with swords and double-pointed spears. Yet whenever the two Ajax the Great turned to face them and stood firm, their courage broke, and none dared rush forward to fight over the body. Thus, straining, they carried the dead man out of the battle toward the hollow ships, while behind them the fight burned on, fierce and unrelenting, like a sudden fire sweeping through a city, devouring houses in its blaze as the wind drives it roaring forward. So the endless thunder of men and horses followed them as they went. And they, like mules that brace themselves with all their strength to drag a great beam or ship's timber down a steep rocky path, hearts worn out with toil and sweat. So they labored, straining, to carry the corpse away. Behind them the two Ajax held the enemy back, like a wooded ridge that checks the rushing force of water. Though their strong currents press hard against it, yet it turns them aside and scatters their waters across the field, and all their force cannot break it. So the two Ajax the Great held the battle off behind them, keeping the Trojans back from the Achaeans. Yet still they followed close, and above all others pressed forward Aeneas and glorious Hector. And before these, as a cloud of starlings or jackdaws go screaming in terror when they see a hawk coming, the hawk that brings death to the smaller birds. So the young Achaean warriors shrank back before Aeneas and Hector, crying out in fear, and forgot the fury of battle. Many fine pieces of armor fell on both sides of the trench as the Danaans fled, and there was no easing of the war. You're listening to Classics Made Clear, classic texts translated with accuracy and accessibility for today's listener. Please like, subscribe, leave a comment, and share these videos with your friends.